Thank you for listening to the Real and Raw podcast. For more information, you can find us at inspiringhope.org.au or join the mailing list. Journey with us as we aim to inspire the hope of Jesus from generation to generation. We are praying for you. Have a blessed day.
Well, here we are, Jess, on the couch.
Jen, yes.
And we've swapped places.
I know, it feels very strange.
It does feel very strange. I like it from this side, though.
You happy there?
Yeah,
I'm pretty happy too.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
And
I like your blanket too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'm definitely into throw rugs.
Yeah. I can tell.
Yeah,
I love
big
them.
shout
Me
out
too.
to Adair's. And I think this one is from Myers or David Jones. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And it's nice and heavy. I like it because it's heavy.
Yeah.
And we're not drinking tea this afternoon. We're drinking bougie mineral waters. I'm drinking sparkling water with raspberry, infused with wonky raspberries.
Wonky.
Yeah, it says wonky.
Wow,
Wonky
I don't
raspberries.
have any. Oh no, I do. Sparkling water infused with wonky cucumbers. Oh, do you know what it would be? I'd say it'd be like the farmer's pick. You know how not the farmer's pick. You know how the farmers have to reject certain ones because they don't hit the supermarket size.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Oh,
I
so
imagine.
it's bougie water that saved raspberries.
Oh, here it is. Wonky fruit, fighting food waste by accepting misfits. We judge on taste, not looks.
Oh.
There we go.
We judge on taste, not looks. Speaking of taste, we just filmed a really fun little episode for our subscribers only, so special content. And here we are. So you will have got that by this point in the journey.
It was very entertaining.
It was very
For me
entertaining.
especially.
You need to subscribe to get just that special little segment we did. But we are here at the end of our engaging intentionally through engaging intentionally by navigating life's transitions in a measured way. And this afternoon we are going to be talking about measured. Now, measured is an interesting word. It was always engaging intentionally, navigating transitions. And then my friend Ruth, a couple of years ago, we were talking and she just mentioned the word measured in the frame of the conversation we were talking. And I thought, that is such a great word. That is such a great thought. That is such a great concept. I'm going to add it onto the end. Sorry, girls. I've got the Jeanette Nolan cough. You'll have to bear with me. But that's where it came from, measured. And for me, when I think about measured, I wish someone had had this conversation with me 25 years ago, 30 years ago. The big thing on measured when we think about transitions and navigating them is there's two words, Jess. Learning to respond, not react. And this is definitely something that I have personally had to work on in my life's journey. I'm a very passionate person. You know, we were talking about personality traits before. I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know, I like to be the defender of all things, good. But reacting never gets you the response that you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you often then have to go around the long way. So I have a little acronym here that it's not really an acronym. It's just some little thoughts. And I've written, it's the case of the 2 Ps versus the 4 Ps. So reactions tend to go something like this. When you react to something, girls, you panic and then you proceed. And when we are talking about engaging intentionally, navigating life's transitions, this is not a good way to end that journey by panicking and proceeding. It kind of undoes like if you just pull something and undo it, it just undoes everything we're talking about. You know, it's not functional, it's being dysfunctional. It's not trusting the Lord. It's not coming from a position of rest. It's not being still and knowing that God is God. It's not letting the Lord fight for you and being still. It's not seeking God's peace in the situation. It's just, you are just panicking and then you proceed. And I guess, I think that reacting is probably a lot more normal than responding. I think responding has to really be something that we learn and that we practice. And
it's very it's very one dimensional, isn't it, as well? And
It's
panic
very
is fear based.
That's a really good point. Panic is fear-based. So instead of all the things that I just listed off, doing all of that, we just panic. We feel the fear. We allow the fear to take over our emotions. And then what happens? You know, feelings aren't facts. And then we act on those feelings that we have.
Yeah.
And we haven't had any time to do anything else but panic and proceed. And a good example of, you know, this is when you receive something, particularly in written form, people just love to get on and write back, but they haven't given it any thought. You know, whenever I receive something that, you know, makes anything within me stand up, I'm like, Jeanette, you have to give that 24 hours. And if it can't wait 24 hours, you at least need to apply the 4 Ps, which are responses. So we move on to responses, tend to go like this. Something happens, you know, you have to navigate a transition. You pause, you pray, you find your peace. We can maybe add a 6th one. You process, you plan, then you proceed. And I just feel like a big wow. There's a huge difference between panicking, operating in fear, and then proceeding, to pausing, seeking the Lord, knowing He's God, finding His peace. So praying, you process, you write down a plan, and then you proceed. And, you know, girls, I just think that learning this little, you know, 2 Ps, 5 Ps, I think it can just really, I can't stress that enough. It can just really revolutionize your life, because so much pain or added pain happens when we react to life's transitions instead of respond to them. You know, and I just, like, I don't know about you, but I can just think of so many times in my history of my life when I think, oh, I just wish I'd responded to that. I just wish I had taken the time. And, you know, another thing about God's will, there's no confusion in God's will. You know, there's no fear in God's will. There's no panic in God's will, but there is the pause, the pray, the process, the plan, and then proceed. And, you know, I just want to speak those verses just into your life, into your circumstance right now that have been our verses throughout this journey. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still, Exodus 14:14, and Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. There is nothing in those verses that indicate to me that you should be reacting. You?
For sure. And I think also with that encapsulates the importance of the pause.
Yeah.
I really like that pauses first.
Yeah.
I know just when doing counselling with people, it's so important for the pause, because often the reaction is, your reaction is it's triggered by a certain insecurity, fear, something that has made you feel threatened in some way. So the pause is actually a really good way for you to ask yourself, what did that just do in me?
Yeah.
And that being still and knowing God, that's about the pause and being one with God and saying, God, what just happened there?
Yeah.
What upset me? What did I feel threatened about? What insecurity has that struggled? Has that triggered? And then, using God's wisdom to see then where the dysfunction is, the trigger, the reactive energy, and then where the function is, which is moving on through the other P's.
That's exactly right. And, just as you were talking then, it's interesting because it's almost doing a full circle in this measured moment. It's almost taking us back to engage. So you can engage through fear or you can engage by faith. And yeah, engaging is so important because it's setting up the foundation for what comes after.
And engage is the word, because I think a lot of people, I know that even just growing up, I definitely went through a phase of thinking, because all the Christian women and leaders around me would say, well, you just turn to God. When you're going through a problem, you've got to turn to God. You've got to turn to God. And my processing of that, it wasn't a personal turning to God. It was, well, what does the Bible stories say?
Yeah.
What did the big Bible characters do? We'll copy that. And then even on a deeper level, some of the big pillars in the Bible, you would look at some of those concepts, some of the things that Jesus said, and sometimes you'd go, well, none of my life circumstances line up with these Bible stories. So now what do I do? And then the next thing I would do would just be to pray.
Yep.
And ask for a lot of stuff. Just from my lack, I would ask for what I was lacking.
Yeah.
Whereas now, just understanding God and his language a little bit more, it's more about spending time with God and learning. What is the lesson here? What is it that you can show me that I'm, you need to shine light on? What do I misunderstand about this situation?
Yeah.
Pausing and reflecting and engaging with a living God about your very own personal understanding of the situation. That's so powerful.
It is powerful, and he understands, he understands the complexity of the transition that you're trying to navigate. Like he's got all the pieces actually. So often we only have the part that we've been told or the part that we can see. And again, that's also choosing to be intentional because you're going to the one who knows. Yeah. So that's very powerful. And I wrote those P's a few years ago now. I just found myself in a situation, and I was talking about this the last podcast, where I just found myself facing a whole bunch of different things and circumstances that I never could have dreamt up in my mind. I never thought that I would have to deal with those particular things. There's certain things in life that you sort of think, well, one day I'm going to die and, I might have to deal with a sickness, or, where I live, there's a high chance of like bushfires. We might see a bushfire one summer. Not that I'm expecting any of those things, but, they're sort of in the back of my mind. This transitions that I had to navigate, they were just came out of nowhere. I never in a million years, I'm just trying to paint the picture, did I think that I would have to walk through these things. And I'm not going to give the specific circumstances, but I've just written here, because it's just, sometimes it's easier to read things, but I just wrote, a few years ago, my whole life fell apart. Everything that I had known was taken from me, and it hurt like nothing I had ever experienced before. So I hadn't seen these days. I didn't have anything. I knew that God was faithful. I knew that he was God. I knew that he would help me through. But I was struggling, like you were saying, as if you're going to the Bible stories. I was struggling to find something in the repertoire of my journey, of my walk with the Lord, that was going to get me through. I had to do a new thing. I couldn't just rely on my past faith. I had to find a fresh faith. I had to find a new faith. And yeah, it hurt. And I had my little daughter here. I had 2 miscarriages that year, and it was awful. It was just awful. I don't know. I'm sure many people who are listening, many of you girls, sometimes it's hard to just put into words, but it was just awful. And I was living in this house. We'd just moved to this house, and I had this beautiful view out in my back garden, and you can see the city skyline from my room. And I have my little prayer chair, and I was sitting up there one day, and God spoke to me so clearly about the importance of, there was no other way forward but to actually not even respond. Definitely not react. That was just a big red cross. There was no option to react, but not even to respond. But there was a third thing. It was to be still. And he made it so clear to me that I was not to speak, and that was it. You know, I couldn't even leave the house. I was afraid to leave the house. I lost my confidence. I think it was about 3.5 years before I did any sort of speaking again. I went off social media. I used to love to post on social media. I don't know, it was just a way of connecting with the big world that I had. And there's always things you can do better with posting. It can always be a little bit of a rabbit hole. But it was just something I enjoyed. You know, I enjoyed interacting with people. I enjoyed all that, particularly through COVID. Stopped all of that. And I just felt like I was just being strangled. Like there was, I didn't even have a voice. Sorry if I just knocked the microphone 10 times, Annabelle, when you edit it. But I just felt so strangled. And if I'm to be really, really honest, it was really, really hard to trust God in that circumstance, because I was doing all the things. I was engaging. I was being intentional. I was navigating my transitions. And God was like, well, Jeanette, you have to do that in a very measured way. And the reason I'm telling you this story, girls, is we live in a world, and I'm looking at you now, like right down the barrel of a gun. This series that Jess and I have just shared our hearts in, and that the Lord has spoken through us. You know, it is always my prayer that you do not see us, but that you see him. And, you know, we are praying, and we are going to continue to pray that the Lord will, in the time you watch this, speak to you directly into your circumstances, directly into your lives, in a way that you can understand and that you can hear. And that's what he did for me in this circumstance. But he made it very clear, in a world that says you should speak, you should justify yourself, you should tell your side of the story. The thing is, when something that it happens that is this full on, telling your side of the story is actually not helpful. Because all it does is it invites speculation. Oh, well, maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe, you know, maybe. I have really learnt that through being measured, there is so much power in being still. And then people are going to say, I know what you're going to say next, but hang on, Jeanette, like I feel so powerless if I'm still. You know, I want justice. I want to be heard. I don't want to feel like I'm being strangled. And look, there are definitely, it's just come into my spirit, there are definitely circumstances where you need to speak up and you need to go to the authorities and all of that. This is not a blanket case teaching, but what I'm saying is I'm telling you about what God spoke to me. So I'd sit up in that chair prayer in my room, and I would look out at the city, and God, all he said was, you just be still, and that you know know that I am God, and know that I am your God, and know that I am the God of these circumstances. And, I had to learn through that the power of doing hard things and being afraid. And I had to learn the importance of prayer and being still. And I had to learn the importance of being still and hearing from God. And, in one of my prayer times, Jess, the Lord said to me, well, Jeanette, I'm going to give you a bit of a formula to pray. And I think that we serve a powerful and we serve a very present God. He is not just sitting up there in the heavenly realms with a big iron stick doing nothing. He is present and he is with us and he is amongst us. And God said to me, Jeanette, I'm going to give you 2 words that I want you to pray into your circumstance. And those words were dismantle and expose. Now, let me unpack that. Because when he first said, I'm like, yeah, we're going to dismantle, we're going to expose, we're going to divide, we're going to conquer, I'm going to get justice. No, that's not what he was talking about at all. That was a completely wrong interpretation of those words. That is not the heart of God, to just bust people, humiliate people. And these are really hard concepts to try and get your head around, because I felt like I had been busted. I felt like I had been humiliated 10 times over. Injustice, unfairness. And now you're telling me that that's not what that means? And God's like, no. You are to come into the quiet place and you are to pray that these circumstances that are happening around you will be dismantled, that they will be broken down with a right heart.
I'm sorry for being so silent. I just feel like it's so important to acknowledge how I know when we're sitting here and we've got our pretty shirts on and, we're having a chat with our beautiful blankets and our bougie soda water, it's easy to brush over it's easy to say things lightly. And you just said that you had 2 miscarriages and that you had been through a really dark time and you were scared to leave your house. And I know you, and for the 3.5 years where you didn't speak and you didn't post very much and you were very just closed, and that is not you. And that is a dark space for people, for anybody. And
It is.
I know when, as speakers and when you're somebody who's up the front a lot, it's easy to see that person for who they are on the stage, but to not see the weight of what they're actually going through at home. And I just really wanted to give you the space to tell your whole story just then, because people often, can brush over that without understanding truly how heavy that time was for you. And I think that what stood out to me was just the rawness and the humanness of you questioning how can I turn to God for this? And how is God good in this? How is this situation for me? How am I, it rocks you, and it rocks you to your core. And the thing that really attracts me to speaking in the Real and Raw series with you is the question of, when you are at rock bottom, where is your hope? Where is your hope? Because you are, and rock bottom is life and death stuff. Stuff that you have lived your whole life being, and then suddenly something really big changes, something is taken away from you, and it changes you. And you can no longer be the person you were before that happened. And the listeners of Real and Raw, we just prayed for you all. We just prayed with a heart that was burdened, because we both felt how important it is to identify that we all we've all got a story, and we don't brush over that.
Yeah.
And we're here because we care about the story. We care about the heaviness of what you're carrying, and you're not alone. And Jeanette, even though it was COVID, where everyone was at their most alone, Jeanette wasn't alone, and her hope, she found God at the bottom. She found God at the bottom. And the dismantle and expose, I totally feel that as well, because you think dismantle and expose, like that's Instagram cancel culture. If you do something like that on TikTok, your followers, they will expose you and they will shame you, and you will be completely humiliated and kicked out and cancelled. The justice for that would feel you'd want that.
You definitely want that.
But, you know, to me, it reminds me of the last podcast that we just did around just that applying wisdom, dismantling it and taking that to God. I feel like that's where the wrestle with God can really take place, and you can really put that in front of God. The amount of times that I've gone into the presence of God with something and really just I've thrown it on the table and I've said, God, this is not, I don't want this. This is not what I planned. You haven't shown me this. This is pain. This is suffering, and I hate it. Get rid of it. Why are you giving this to me? Yeah. And that's the operating table. That's where you do get to pull it apart, and God gets to, if you want to have a powerful place in your life, if you don't want to be a victim, you have to be able to see it clearly. And dismantling it is about pulling apart the bits and going, where did this bit come from? Where's the broken bit? Where's the poison? Where's the infection? What is the belief system about this? What am I believing that's not true here? What have I misunderstood about who I am in this situation? Yep. God will show you. He shows you through pictures. He shows you through words, and words that get put on your heart, like dismantle and expose. Yep. And I feel like the expose part is when you finally get to the wound. And in counselling, that's called the rupture.
The rupture.
And the rupture is really such a vital, painful part where you suddenly have to see the reality for what it is and agree.
Yeah.
And that is the mirror. That's your reflection of what is actually going on. And when you can just finally agree, I love the term agree with the accuser, because then it silences the accuser. There is nothing more strong in a court case than going, you're right.
You're right. And it's interesting because you just drew out, and whilst we talk about the points, but we don't plan this. This is all Holy Spirit led. When God gave me these words, those words, dismantle and expose, I thought that was going to mean justice for me. And it has in a roundabout way. But the dismantle and expose, it wasn't for them. It was for me.
Totally. And the justice is actually so much more rich and deep, because it's justice in the roots. It's healing the roots of the sick plant rather than just dealing with the sick fruit.
Yeah.
You're changing into a healed being.
You're changing into a healed being. And God, when my Heavenly Father gave me those words, and I would sit up in that chair again and I would wrestle and I would wrestle and I would pray, and you know, I prayed through multitudes of things, but what actually happened was, by me spending time with the Lord and falling more in love with Him and meditating on His face and reading His word and being found in prayer and coming before the accuser and saying, you know what, Satan, how can it possibly get anything worse than this? Whatever, not in some gisting, like poking fun, but you have lost, because now, or if you just think of me as this twig, what's happening is just in the bottom of my little big toe, there's this little like the blood starts flowing and all of my limbs become green, and then it spreads out to my arms and my fingers and goes to the top of my head, or you can say from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. And the Lord washes you and refreshes you, and he dismantles every argument that's been brought against you. It's not that the people are just part of the problem. He dismantles every argument. He dismantles every false testimony. He dismantles every false accusation. He dismantles all of the pain and the injustice and the fear and the insecurity and the betrayal and all of the things that you feel. And he exposes them to you so that you can heal. And all of a sudden, it's not actually about navigating that circumstance anymore. It's about being still and knowing that God is God and having him show that. And now, not to dump that and fast forward, but because there's so much time in between that. But now, when I felt like God released me again to speak, I wouldn't dare open my mouth till he told me. I'm not there trying to justify anything anymore. I'm just being my healed and whole self. And as for those circumstances, you know, time is a great equalizer, and the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And by him dismantling and exposing, he has given me the strength and the courage to face in real time on planet Earth my accusers, but not just to face them, to actually love them like Jesus. And I cannot even begin to put into words the feelings of hope and freedom that gives to you. And now I've always been called to inspire the hope of Jesus to a hurting world, but there's so much freedom now in my little pep in my walk, in my steps, sorry. There's so much hope. Even though it was inspiring hope, it's just completely different to me now. There's so much love. You know, I'm just like, Lord, help me to love others like Jesus. Help me to see others like Jesus. And it all stemmed from that conversation. The 3 words: measured, responding, not reacting. That's where it all stemmed from. And those, I think about that suffering and I just think to myself, you know, that suffering saved my life, and it took me to such a deep place in my walk with Jesus, in my daily walk with him. And, you know, we have sat on this couch for over 5 hours now, and we've talked through these things, and we have laboured through these things, and we have poured our heart into these things. But that's the end goal for me, you know, and for you girls, that you will just fall more and more in love with Jesus. And those Hebrew words you gave before around wisdom, you know, you do not have to live in dysfunction. That is a lie from the pit of hell. You do not have to live in dysfunction. There is no person, circumstance or thing that can hold you down, because we serve a functioning and faithful and ever present, and all the present, the big theological words, God.
That's just exactly it. You're playing a different game.
You're playing a different game. You're walking a different walk.
And really, you've already won. And it really is a matter of just believing it. And, you know, that the Lion King, you know how Simba runs away?
Yeah.
He runs away because of a false story.
Yep.
That he was guilty.
A false narrative.
A false narrative. And so he lived many years of his life in the jungle running away and believing that he was a bad X, Y, and Z for all of his bad things that he did. And the thing that I love about that story is that the entire time Simba was in the jungle believing that he was a bad guy, he was still the heir to the throne. He was still the prince.
Yeah, wow.
And it didn't even matter what he believed
Yeah.
about himself.
Yeah.
All he had to do was come home.
Yeah.
And he just had to just choose to be king. It was a really symbolic little message for children. But it's so symbolic for adults as well. You are royalty. You are a child of God. And we can fall under the illusion that we're guilty because of our bad behavior, because of our choices, because of our dysfunction, because of the bad things that have happened to us. We can live in a false narrative and just little by little start daring to believe that we actually are more than that, and that actually we're still royalty, we're still God's children, and being God's child is a completely different game to good and bad behaviour.
Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking, Lord, how do we end this? And I think you just ended it beautifully. Like, despite your circumstances, you know, girls, despite the transitions that you have to navigate during this life, you are still a daughter of the King, you know, and there's nothing that can change that. No false narrative, no, you know, those long list of things we went through before that can come against us. You know, there's nothing that can change that. And, you know, our hope is that this little series will have just pointed you heavenward, would have encouraged you, would have lifted your eyes heavenward. And just remember, you know, none of us know what we're doing. None of us know what we're doing. It's okay to do it afraid. People are going to misunderstand you. People are not going to like you, but you're a daughter of the King. And, you know, you can come home and apply these things to your life so that you can walk in function, not dysfunction. So here we are at the end of our engaging intentionally by navigating life's transitions in a measured way. And I think we'll just end with our two scriptures. Exodus 14:14. The Lord will, that's not open to interpretation. Will. It's a full word. Will fight for you. You need only to be still. You got to go back and listen to all the episodes because we've already done the context. And Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. Jesus loves you, and so do we. We'll see you very soon in the next episode. You'll be back for the Christmas special.
I know.
The
Wear my Christmas hat.
What? Oh yeah, we're going to have Christmas hats, girls. So
We'll
the
have
Christmas
to custom make
extravagant.
mine. I've got a big head.
You can custom make it. That's not my gifting.
You can make it for me, Jeanette.
I'm going to get you back for
This'll
that
be
donut
good.
you shoved in my mouth. Okay. We love you, girls. Bye.
We strive to inspire the hope of Jesus by building girls up generation to generation. Our hope is that you are inspired wherever you are in your walk with the Lord and in your life through this content. For additional information, you can find us at inspiringhope.org.au. We pray that you are blessed and encouraged by the Real and Broad podcast hosted by Jeanette Nolan.